And the more that you learn to orient towards yourself the way you would orient towards another human who is in emotional distress, the more that you will be able to take action and use your voice in situations that feel difficult. The ability to cheerlead yourself, the ability to be kind to yourself, these internal abilities are necessary if we want to develop the emotional capacity to face difficult, challenging situations. Welcome to The Art of Speaking Up, a podcast that helps professional women access the limitless potential that lies within them. I'm your host, Jessica Guzik, and my mission is to help you find that spark inside you that has the power to transform your career in ways you may not have thought possible. I'm so excited that you're here. And now, on to the show. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Jess. I'm the host and creator of the Art of Speaking Up podcast, and I am a coach for women. I support women in building confidence, developing a very powerful verbal communication style, and elevating into leadership roles. And today, we are talking about one of the most important things that will help you become super successful in your corporate career, and that is having the courage to speak up and use your voice in meeting rooms and in work conversations that are scary and intimidating. Maybe your boss is in the room, maybe it's hard for you when there's lots of people in the room. But when there's lots of people in the room, those are the key moments where you can make that solid impression and show all of those people your thought leadership and your capabilities. And so even though it can feel hard and intimidating, it is so important that you are contributing and making your mark in those work conversations. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about the mindset work and the underlying psychological capabilities and capacities that will help you learn to speak up more often in those rooms so that you can get noticed, have an impact, and really get yourself out of the mode of being someone who works hard behind the scenes and get into the mode of someone who has a strong voice and who is seen as a highly promotable, assertive leader. That is what we are talking about today. We've got analogies, we've got frameworks, we've got mindset work, we've got all the stuff that you love. I am so excited to dive into it. Before we go deeper, I have two exciting and time-sensitive announcements. Announcement number one, keep listening to the podcast over the next couple of weeks because I am working on a brand new, never before released video training. The purpose of this training is to help you grow your confidence and ignite that spark of belief in yourself that you need to show up bigger and have a strong voice at work. If you are ready for a jolt of motivation, a jolt of encouragement, and some really powerful tools that will help you excel when you are in rooms and conversations and meetings with leaders at your company, you are going to love this training. It will help you with both the tools and the mindset that you need to be a sharp, confident, effective verbal communicator. It is not out yet, but it is coming, so get excited. And announcement number two, mark your calendar. I'm going to be opening enrollment for my signature group program, The Art of Speaking Up Academy, beginning June 25th. Make sure you are ready for that date because spots will be allocated on a rolling basis. If it's the first time that you're hearing about this program, this is my group program where I support you in building confidence and elevating your verbal communication. It is an intimate small group program led live by me every week, and it is a transformational journey where you get to do the inner work to grow your self-confidence, and you get to learn the core tools that you need to communicate at an executive level. Now, sometimes people hear executive communication, communicate at an executive level, and they think that sounds scary, that sounds hard. In the Art of Speaking Up Academy, I make it easy. With the right tools, crisp, clear communication can be easy, and that is what we do together in the Academy. We help you grow your confidence, and we help make strong, effective verbal communication feel easy. Like I mentioned, June 25th is when doors open. Make sure you are ready because applications will be on a rolling basis, and there are actually a few spots in the cohort that are already full. So just make sure that you're listening to the podcast and that you're tuning in over the next couple weeks so you don't miss anything. And with that, I want to get into some really powerful mindset tools to help you take up space, to help you use your voice, to help you speak up even when you're in groups and in rooms with colleagues and with your boss and with senior leaders at your company. And when it comes to speaking up and using your voice, it's as much an emotional challenge as it is a practical challenge. In other words, it's not just about knowing how to articulate your thoughts clearly and knowing how to find the right words to express your opinions and ideas, but it's also about having the courage to face the emotional vulnerability and scariness that comes with speaking up. Sharing a thought, sharing an idea, using your voice in a room full of people who are watching you requires courage. It requires emotional fortitude. It's not necessarily something easy. If it was easy and if it didn't require that emotional fortitude, then it would be much simpler for you to go out and do it. And I share this to normalize it for you if it's hard. It is normal for it to be hard. Speaking up is a form of being seen. It's a form of showing ourselves to other people. It's a form of opening ourselves up to other people's thoughts, other people's judgments, other people's critiques. It's a way of allowing people's eyes and minds to be on us. And there's something inherently terrifying about that because there's so much about that that is outside of our control. And speaking up means facing those things that are outside of our control. It is outside of our control exactly how the words are going to come out of our mouth. It is outside of our control exactly what thoughts other people around us are going to have about the words that come out of our mouth. And to step into that place where all of those things are outside of your control is scary for a large number of people. And this is normal. As humans, we want to be liked. We want to be in control of being liked. We want to be in control of the situation. And so we've got to strengthen our mindset and strengthen our inner fortitude in order to learn to do that. Now, the good news is you can learn to do that. You can learn to face that scariness and that uncertainty and those situations where you cannot necessarily control everything. And doing that is going to be so rewarding because it's going to make you feel so strong and like such a badass. And it's going to also help you develop your reputation at work and have a bigger impact and get noticed and get promoted faster. So it is worth learning how to do. It is worth building that mental muscle. And that is what we are going to be talking about. So the first thing that I want to share with you is just the idea of emotional distress and how emotional distress can stop us from showing up strong and taking action. And then I'm going to share an analogy with you to help you not let those moments of emotional distress stop you. So when I use the phrase emotional distress, what I really mean is just any situation where you feel distressed. It could mean that you feel scared, you feel vulnerable, you feel exposed, you feel anxious, you feel uncomfortable. But it's a moment where you're in some sort of internal distress. And typically, if you're in process of learning to use your voice more, learning to speak up more, having more of a voice in the room, you are probably battling and learning to navigate some form of emotional distress. Now, the intensity of that emotional distress and the specific experience of exactly what it is usually different from person to person, but there's some really scary feeling that you have to experience and confront if you want to get more practice speaking up and using your voice. And I want to share an analogy that I think is going to help you learn how to navigate those moments of emotional distress so that they don't take you out of the game. And so that moment of feeling challenged and scared and feeling stretched in a really uncomfortable way doesn't prevent you from speaking up and having the impact and the voice that you want to have in the room. So the analogy that I want to share for this is I want you to imagine that you have decided that you want to go on like a jog, maybe, or not a jog, like a run. You want to do like a marathon or a half marathon or a 10K or a 5K, but you decide you want to set this goal. And so that you can feel really proud and accomplished, you put a date on your calendar and you're like, okay, on this date, I'm going to run this distance. And you train for it and you practice for it. And as the date is approaching, you are starting to feel ready. You are feeling like, oh my gosh, I can totally do this. My training is going well. I'm ready to prove to myself that I can run this race. Okay, now I want you to imagine that on the day of the race that you have decided that you are going to run, you open your door to go outside and go to your running place and get it done. And you see that it is raining so intensely. The rain is coming down. It is loud. It is aggressive. It is wet out. And, you have a thought that like, this was the date that you set. This was your big goal. Like, you don't want to postpone this. Like, you are really frustrated and disappointed that it's raining so hard because it's messing up this entire beautiful plan that you created for yourself. Okay, now when this happens, you have a few different options for how you can respond. The first way you can respond is you can see the rain, you can slam the door and say, I'm not going to reach my goal. I'm not going to run this race by this deadline that I had set for myself and trained for. It is raining. I don't want to deal with this rain. I'm closing the door and I'm not going to hit that initial goal. That is your first option. Now, another option that you have, and this is something that a lot of my clients do, is you can blame yourself. You can look at the rain and you can feel the frustration and disappointment of how it's interfering with your plan. And you can start to have very self-blaming, self-judging thoughts like, I'm so stupid. Why didn't I think that it might have rained? Why didn't I account for this? I always plan things wrong. I always mess things up. This is so typical of me. Why do I keep screwing everything up? And you can really turn against yourself and make it all about how wrong you are and how you in some ways are responsible for this situation, which is very much outside of you, by the way. Like, you don't control the weather. Now, your last option in this analogy is you can be like, you know what? It is raining and I didn't expect it to be raining and I don't want it to be raining, but I set a goal for myself and I am going to accomplish this goal. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to equip myself to run in the rain. I'm going to find a place to run that is safe so that I won't like slip and fall and injure myself. I'm going to get some gear so that I'm not getting wet and so that the rain isn't soaking into my clothing. And I'm going to go out and hit my goal and run this race even though it's raining. And I'm going to feel so amazing about myself at the end of this because not only did I hit my goal, but I didn't let this obstacle stop me. I saw the rain and I did it anyway. Okay, now the reason that I love this analogy is because it helps us understand different options that we have for how we can respond when we encounter an obstacle. And in the case of this running example, I shared a few different ways you could respond. You could either avoid the goal that you set out to do because of the obstacle. You could blame yourself and get really mad at yourself because of the obstacle, or you could just gear up to face the obstacle. Now, you trying to speak up in meetings is a lot like this analogy of you wanting to go on this run and hit this goal and hit this milestone, but facing this gigantic rainstorm. The rainstorm represents the moment of emotional distress, the emotional internal obstacles that get in the way when you are in rooms and wanting to speak up and use your voice. Those obstacles might be obstacles like doubt, fear, anxiety, nervousness, comparing yourself to people, not feeling confident internally. There will be some emotional obstacle that kind of feels like a rainstorm, only the rainstorm is happening within you, within your mind, within your heart, within your psyche. So just like the runner, while you would have preferred sunny, clear weather, and while that might have really helped you show up in a big way, you're encountering some adversity, some obstacles, some difficulty. And just like in the running analogy, when the obstacle comes up, and in the case of speaking up, it's those scary feelings, it's that emotional distress that you experience. at the thought of using your voice and being seen by people and having people react to what you're saying and hear you speaking and facing all that uncertainty. But just like in the running analogy, you have choices. And they're the same choices that I laid out in the analogy. And I want to walk through them because you're probably going to be able to notice yourself and your own patterns in these examples. So the first option you have is to avoid the obstacle. So just like the runner slams the door and says, I'm not going to hit my goal, I'm not going to get this run done by the target date that I said I would, just like the runner makes that decision, you can make that decision. You can say, you know what, I'm not going to speak. I'm not going to share my thoughts. I'm going to be a wallflower. I'm going to be the person listening. I'm going to be the person taking notes. And often when we are in that pattern of avoidance and we decide that we're going to cope with the emotional distress by just not taking the action, by just avoiding the action, we often will justify it and rationalize it because it is more comfortable for us to come up with reasons that sound good and practical and responsible. When we can come up with reasons that sound good and practical and responsible, and those reasons justify us not speaking up, not contributing, not using our voice, we feel better about ourselves. And sometimes that's a way that we are unconsciously, like we're not deciding to do this, but our mind is doing this. It is unconsciously feeding us a lie that is more comfortable than the truth. Often the truth is, this feels uncomfortable. I'm in emotional distress and I don't want to face this emotional distress. It actually feels much more comfortable to say, you know what? Like the other people in this room are already sharing ideas. Like all the good ideas are out there. They know more than me. They have more years of experience than me. I'll do it in the next meeting. There isn't really a good moment. Everyone's talking over each other. No one's going to notice. Like if I just skip it this one time, is it really that big of a deal? These are all ways where we're rationalizing it and trying to make it okay. And I don't say this in a blamey way, in a way to, make you feel bad about this or to make you judge yourself. Absolutely, that is not my intention. My intention is the opposite of that, to help you be kind to yourself and understanding of yourself. But I point it out because for us to change and for us to make meaningful progress, we have to be truthful with ourselves. If we can't be truthful with ourselves about what is actually happening, it is really difficult for us to break the old pattern that we're trying to break because we're not being honest with ourselves, which means we can't see the actual pattern. So if I am lying to myself and telling myself my voice is not needed in this room, everyone already knows this, people have better answers than me, I really don't need to be participating. If I keep telling myself those lies, I can never actually solve the problem. Because if those lies are true, if my opinion really isn't needed, if everyone else really does have all the answers, if I really am not going to be able to contribute meaningfully, then I actually shouldn't speak. Like those reasons actually make sense. There's no need to change. Like why would I speak and contribute something if there's no value in doing that? So as long as I'm finding reasons why there's no value in doing it, I don't have a real motivation to change. And so the only way I'm going to change is when I can see, I'm coming up with all these reasons why I shouldn't participate, why my voice isn't needed, because I'm scared to participate. And if I come up with reasons why I shouldn't participate, then I don't have to face that fear and be with the reality of how scary this is and be with the truth. The actual truth is my opinion is needed. I do need to be speaking. This is incredibly important, not just for me to contribute in the room, but for me to drive forward my career. And it feels really terrifying and stressful to do that. And I wish it wasn't that way. That is the truth that is often one that we're avoiding, that we're scared to come closer to. But what I want to offer you is that coming closer to that truth is one of the sweetest gifts that you can give yourself. Because if you can see the truth, now all of a sudden you have a new pathway to change. Because when you shift from like, no one needs me to participate, like I really don't need to be participating, to no, this is very important and it's hard. Now all of a sudden you're in agreement that you do want to be speaking up and using your voice. And now you have a goal. Now you have a mission. And yes, it might be hard, but at least you're not lying to yourself and telling yourself that it's not important. Because if you're telling yourself it's not important, it's going to be so hard for you to break the pattern and start doing it. Why would we push ourselves to do something that's not important or not required, right? It is important. It is required. And we want to hold that as our truth, even in the moments where we want to opt out of it. So anyway, that is the first way that you can respond when you feel the fear and emotional distress around speaking up, which is you can avoid. Now, there's two other ways. So that was kind of a long rabbit hole that I went down, but we're pulling ourselves out of the rabbit hole because we have other rabbit holes to go down together. So let's go down them. So the second thing that you might do in response to thinking about speaking up and feeling emotional distress is you might blame yourself. And this is something that is so common with my clients. And it is such a big thing that comes up that I help them work through. And I'm guessing it is going to be a big thing for you. So just like in the running example, I told you that one way you could react to it raining on the day of your big run is you could blame yourself and think of all the ways that you caused it and you made it happen and you made bad decisions and you planned poorly. So similarly, when you are trying to speak up in rooms, one of the ways that you can respond to the emotional distress involved in facing that challenge is you can blame yourself. That looks like you being harsh and mean and cruel to yourself and saying things like, I can't believe this is so hard for me. Why am I always feeling this nervous? Why is this always happening to me? Why is everyone else so much more confident than me? Why is it taking me so long to learn to do this? Why am I getting stuck in these patterns over and over? Why do I struggle with this so much? Why am I so awkward? Why is everything difficult for me? Why do people feel so much ease when for me, it's such a big barrier? So you go inwards and you blame yourself. Now, just like in the running example, blaming yourself doesn't help you face the obstacle. And this is really, really important to understand. Heavy blame and heavy self-criticism turns your attention towards you and what you have done wrong instead of turning your attention towards how you can powerfully face the situation. Blaming yourself makes the hard thing feel harder and worse. It makes you feel worse because now not only are you facing something difficult, but you're facing something difficult and you're a bad person because you caused that difficult thing. Now, oh my gosh, there's so much I can say about blame, and I have so many thoughts on this, but one of the big ones that I'll share is it is really important to be able to hold in your mind that just because something is hard for you doesn't mean you are bad, doesn't mean you caused it, doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It is so important if you want to build genuine confidence that is rooted in a place of loving and respecting yourself. It is so important to be able to experience adversity, experience emotional distress, and not jump to a place of I am so bad, I am so wrong for feeling this. You have to be able to experience emotional distress without self-blame, without going into criticism, without deciding that you must be awful and it's your fault. Just like I mentioned earlier, the fact that it rains on the day of your race, you didn't cause that rain. Likewise, you didn't cause the entire set of causal circumstances that led up to this moment of you wanting to speak up and using your voice and feeling challenged. It might feel like you created all of that, but you didn't. There are so many things outside of you that led you to this moment. And so not only are you blaming yourself for something that you didn't cause, but also when you do that, you make the obstacle and the adversity harder to face because you feel worse in a moment where you need to feel strong and solid and determined and gritty and capable. You go inwards and you blame yourself, and then you start to feel incapable and bad about yourself and unable to handle hard things. When we go into blame and self-criticism in response to a moment of adversity or a moment of emotional distress, we take away all of the inner psychological resources that we need to face the difficult thing and navigate through it, and we replace those with feelings that make us feel incapable. So it's almost like In the running analogy, it's raining and it's as if you're saying like, oh my gosh, I'm such a horrible person. I can't believe I didn't think about this. I'm going to pick my most like non-weather friendly outfit and I'm going to wear flip-flops and I'm going to go find the most dangerous running track. And I'm going to go out and run in the rain and fall and slip and be cold and struggle because I deserve that because I'm so stupid for planning the race on this day, right? It's like, no, it rained. It's okay. It happens. You're human. You don't need to like tell yourself how wrong you are and do all these things to make yourself feel worse and make it harder. You just got to look at the thing that's in front of you and figure out a way to move forward. And that brings me to the last way that we can respond to adversity and moments of emotional distress, which is you gear up, you get your rain gear, you find a track that's safe to run on in the rain, and you go and you get it done. And this is what I want you to be moving towards. And this is what I want you to be focusing on when you're in rooms and it's feeling difficult to speak up. For most of the women I support, as I'm working with them and as I'm guiding them in their growth, I learn that they've been leaning on the first two options. So when things get hard, their default pattern is often to either avoid the hard thing, which is very normal, very human, we all do it, and or they blame themselves and criticize themselves, and it becomes about how bad and wrong they are. Now, what I want to guide you towards is that you have choices about how you can respond. And especially now listening to this podcast episode, you now have an explicit awareness that there is a third option. The third option is to gear up and face the difficult thing. Now, like I said, in the running analogy and in the rain analogy, you get the gear on and you go out. But in the real situation that we're talking about, which is you speaking up and using your voice courageously, you need to gear up mentally. So it's not physical rain gear that you're putting on, but symbolically, it's similar to that. Rain gear provides you with the protection you need to weather the rain. And so what we want to think about is what protection do you need to weather the emotional distress and the scariness and the vulnerability of speaking up and using your voice. And so many of the women I support, and I was like this as well at the start of my journey, it didn't even occur to me that I could gear up. It didn't occur to me that if I had to face something hard that was going to stretch me, that was going to feel scary, that was going to feel stressful, it didn't occur to me that I could slow down and be like, wait, what can I do to help myself face this? What can I do to help myself get through this? And there's a lot that you can do. You can find support outside of yourself, and you can have actual people to guide you and help you and cheer you on. And in addition to that, what's so powerful is that you can find and create support from within yourself. The proverbial rain gear doesn't have to be something outside of you. It can be something that's grown and nurtured within you. It is the ability to encourage yourself, the ability to cheerlead yourself, the ability to be kind to yourself. These internal abilities are necessary if we want to develop the emotional capacity to face difficult, challenging situations. And for most of the women I support, being kind to themselves and loving themselves and encouraging themselves can feel like a language that they have never heard and never spoken. Actually, I'll change that. It's a language that they're very comfortable offering to other people. They are very comfortable being encouraging and so loving and so generous with everyone else. But when it comes to themselves, it's all of a sudden like a blank screen. Like, what does it look like to be kind to myself? What does it look like to encourage myself? And to make matters more complicated, so many of us develop a habit of, when I'm facing adversity, I should be mean to myself because I should feel amazing all the time. I shouldn't have these difficult moments. So not only do we not have an internal map and an internal understanding of how to be kind and encouraging towards ourselves, but the default pattern that we have developed over years and years of our lives is to be cruel and mean to ourselves when we're feeling vulnerable, when we're feeling scared. So what I want to offer you is that a huge part of your growth is going to come from cultivating this internal ability to offer yourself kindness, gentleness, encouragement, support during the moments where you are typically tempted to judge and blame and shame yourself. It is something that we do quickly. It is something that we do automatically. It takes time to catch that old pattern and slow down and realize that you can show up with so much more kindness and so much more support for yourself, even though you are struggling. But as you begin to rewire that pattern and as you develop that capability, you become so much more equipped to handle difficult situations. And there's a very specific reason why I used the word emotional distress and have been using the word emotional distress in this episode. It's because when we hear that phrase and we imagine another person in emotional distress, most humans have a very strong instinct around, I want to help that person. I want to see what they need. Like, I don't want them to be in emotional distress. It's a feeling you have, like where your heart opens and it softens, and there's a part of you that wants to figure out how you help this person. And like I said, I intentionally use that word because that's the same exact feeling and orientation that you want to develop towards yourself. When you are in emotional distress, you deserve that too. And the more that you learn to orient towards yourself the way you would orient towards another human who is in emotional distress, the more that you will be able to take action and use your voice in situations that feel difficult. Just like with proper rain gear, you can run a race in a thunderstorm. If you have the right protection and you have the right gear, it can be done. And also, after you do it, you're not going to be so scared of running in rainstorms. You've done it. You're so proud of yourself. You feel like a badass. Similarly, with the right level of internal strength and internal psychological resilience, you can show up for the difficult moments. And it starts with slowing down. It starts with noticing the old patterns that you keep getting stuck in. Maybe you're avoiding, maybe you're blaming and criticizing yourself. And it starts with a gentle but firm and determined intention to try something different as often as you possibly can remember. It's not always an instant shift. It's not like, okay, you listened to this episode once and now it's done. It's a process. Change takes time. It doesn't happen instantly. I wish it did, but that's just not how it works. But it's worth putting in the time. It's worth putting in the effort. Because not only does learning to use your voice and speak up help you have impact, right? Help you actually show up for your work in the way that you want to and develop a strong reputation and have people see you as a leader and have people want to promote you and retain you in your organization. But in addition to all of those things, you feel better about yourself. You feel stronger. You feel capable. And instead of being stuck in this place of doubting whether you can do it and feeling like you can't and feeling like you're missing something and feeling like everyone else can, you finally get to prove to yourself that you are just as capable as the next person. And that moments of adversity, difficult moments, aren't capable of taking you out and aren't capable of standing between you and what you desire most for yourself and your career. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. This was such a fun one to record, and I really hope that it fired you up. It certainly fired me up recording it. And I want to remind you that if this is a shift that you want to make, and if you want to work with me to develop this inner strength, to build psychological resilience, to break old patterns of blaming and shaming and criticizing yourself, and to learn how to show up powerfully, even in situations that you find challenging, you are going to love the work that I do with you inside my group program, The Art of Speaking Up Academy. And I would love to invite you to join us and do that work with me and a group of ambitious women who share the same goals and dreams as you do. Now, like I mentioned, make sure you're tuning into the podcast over the next couple of weeks, because not only am I going to be announcing doors opening for the next Academy cohort, but I also have a killer free training that I'm in process of working on right now to help you understand the process of building confidence and becoming a super unstoppable verbal communicator. So make sure that you are tuned into the podcast because I'm going to be announcing those over the next couple of weeks. Mark your calendar, June 25th, enrollment for the Academy is opening. And I will catch you in the next episode. Have an amazing day. Bye.